The cane, the quiet demeanor, it all fit Emma's description. For a moment, Carter hesitated. Shame prickled at the back of his neck as he recalled his harsh words, but he knew what he had to do. Taking a deep breath, he approached Daniel, his boots echoing loudly against the tiled floor. Daniel looked up as Carter stopped in front of him. The officer's usual commanding presence was replaced by a visible struggle to find the right words. I think we need to talk," Carter said, his voice uncharacteristically soft. Daniel tilted his head slightly, his sightless eyes seeming to search for the source of the voice. He recognized it instantly. "What is it, officer?" he asked calmly, though his grip on the cane tightened ever so slightly. Carter shifted uncomfortably, the weight of his own actions pressing down on him. "I owe you an apology," he began, his voice faltering. "I treated you poorly earlier, and it was wrong. I let my frustration get the better of me." Daniel's expression remained unreadable. "That's kind of you to say," he replied evenly. "But why does it matter now?" Carter took a deep breath. "Because I just found out that you're the man who saved my daughters." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Daniel froze, his mind racing to connect the dots. "Your daughters?" he repeated, his voice quieter now. "Yes," Carter said. "Emma and Lily. They told me about you, the blind man who risked his life to pull them out of the fire. That was you, wasn't it?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. He wasn't used to being recognized for his actions. Anonymity had always been his shield. But now, confronted with the raw emotion in Carter's voice, he couldn't deny it. "I heard them crying," he said simply. "No one else was going in. What else could I do?" Carter swallowed hard, his throat tight with emotion. "You did more than anyone else would have. You saved their lives. And he paused, struggling to steady his voice. "And I treated you like you were nothing, like you didn't belong. I don't have the words to make that right." Daniel's grip on his cane loosened slightly. His posture, while still guarded, softened at the sincerity in Carter's tone. "People like me get treated like that all the time," he said. "It doesn't make it right, but I've learned not to expect much from strangers." "But I'm not just a stranger anymore," Carter said earnestly. "You saved the two most important people in my life. I don't know how I can ever repay you, but I'm going to try." Daniel raised an eyebrow, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Repay me? That's not why I did it." "I know," Carter said quickly. "I know you didn't, but it doesn't change what you deserve. Respect, gratitude, and maybe even some help, if you'll let me." For the first time that night, Daniel felt a flicker of something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. He nodded slowly. "All right, officer," he said. "Let's start with a conversation. Sit down, and we'll talk." The two men sat together in the corner of the emergency room, their conversation drawing curious glances from onlookers. Carter listened intently as Daniel shared pieces of his life, stories of resilience, and the quiet battles he fought daily. In turn, Carter opened up about his family, his daughter's recovery, and his own struggles with the weight of his badge. The hours passed quickly, and by the end of the night, they parted ways with a handshake that carried more than words could express. "Não, ainda não terminei. Vou agora finalizar a história como desfecho emocionante. Aqui está." Days passed, and the story of Daniel's heroic rescue began to spread across the city. The local news picked it up after the fire department confirmed the identity of the mysterious blind man who had saved Emma and Lily. Daniel, however, tried to avoid the attention, preferring his quiet, unassuming life. But Officer Carter had other plans. He couldn't let Daniel's courage go unnoticed. Without telling Daniel, he organized a small community gathering to honor him. Carter reached out to neighbors, friends, and even local officials, ensuring that the man who had saved his daughters received the recognition he deserved. The gathering was held at the local community center on a crisp Saturday afternoon. Carter managed to convince Daniel to attend under the pretense of a casual meetup. When Daniel arrived, guided by Carter, he was stunned to hear the sound of applause filling the room. "What's all this?" Daniel asked, his voice tinged with both surprise and hesitation. Carter placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "This is for you," he said warmly. "It's the least we can do." As Daniel was led to the front of the room, the crowd erupted into cheers. Emma and Lily ran up to him, wrapping their arms around his waist. "You're our hero," Emma said, her voice full of emotion. Tears welled up in Daniel's eyes as he hugged them back. For so long he had felt invisible, unnoticed by a world that often dismissed people like him. But now, standing before a room full of people who saw him for who he truly was, he felt something he hadn't in years: appreciation and belonging. Carter stepped forward, holding a small plaque. "Daniel Walker," he began, his voice firm but heartfelt, "you've shown us what true bravery looks like. You didn't just save my daughters. You reminded us all that heroism doesn't come from what we can see, it comes from what's inside us." The crowd erupted into applause again as Carter handed Daniel the plaque. It read, "To Daniel Walker, a hero who showed us the power of courage and compassion." Daniel ran his fingers over the engraved words, his heart swelling with emotion. "I didn't do this for recognition," he said, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat. "I just did what I hope anyone else would have done. But thank you for seeing me." As the event concluded, Daniel and Carter stood together, watching Emma and Lily play nearby. A newfound respect and friendship had formed between them, bridging the gap of misunderstanding and prejudice that had once separated them. For Carter, the encounter was a humbling reminder of the humanity he was sworn to protect. For Daniel, it was proof that even in a world that often overlooked him, his actions could make a difference. And as the sun set over the city, casting a warm glow through the community center windows, the two men exchanged a nod of understanding. One had learned the value of seeing beyond appearances, and the other had found his voice in a world that was finally ready to listen. It was a chilly autumn morning in Central Park, New York City. The golden leaves swirled in the breeze as if nature itself was trying to distract from the somber scene unfolding near one of the park benches. A little girl, no older than 7, sat with her hands gripping the edge of the bench. Her unkempt hair framed a pale face, and her unseeing blue eyes stared blankly into the distance. Her name was Evelyn, though no one called her that anymore. Her mother, a young woman overwhelmed by life and riddled with guilt, had whispered a hasty goodbye just moments earlier. "I'll be back soon," she lied, her voice trembling. Evelyn's sharp ears caught the sound of retreating footsteps, each one echoing louder than the last in her heart. She waited for hours, clutching her small stuffed rabbit for comfort, unaware of the bustling world passing by. The crowd was oblivious to her plight until a retired professor, Samuel Hawthorne, spotted her. Samuel, a widower with no children, had come to the park to clear his mind. He was a man of habit, always carrying a worn-out leather notebook and a thermos of tea. When his gaze fell upon Evelyn, something stirred within him, a combination of curiosity and compassion. He approached cautiously. "Hello, young lady," he said softly, kneeling to meet her at eye level. Evelyn flinched at first, but quickly recognized the warmth in his tone. "Are you waiting for someone?" he asked. "My mommy," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "She said she'd come back." Samuel's heart broke. He knew the truth, though he couldn't bring himself to say it. Instead, he extended a hand. "How about we sit somewhere warmer while we wait?" Reluctantly, Evelyn took his hand. That moment marked the beginning of a bond that would change both their lives forever. "Fique comigo até o final dessa história e descubra como a justiça do destino transformou a vida de Evelyn e Samuel de formas que ninguém poderia imaginar." Samuel Hawthorne led Evelyn out of the crisp autumn air and into the modest warmth of his apartment in Greenwich Village. It was a place lined with bookshelves that seemed to stretch infinitely, their spines reflecting a lifetime of learning and curiosity. Evelyn sat nervously at the edge of a worn couch, clutching her rabbit as if it were her only anchor in an unfamiliar world. Samuel busied himself in the small kitchen, brewing a pot of tea and heating leftover soup. He had no idea what to do with a child, let alone one who appeared abandoned. But there was something about Evelyn, her quiet resilience, the way her unseeing eyes seemed to look right through him, that compelled him to act. Over the next few days, Samuel tried to piece together her story. Evelyn spoke in fragments, her words punctuated by moments of silence, as if she were unsure whether to trust him. Her mother had always been kind, she said, but often sad. Evelyn didn't know where her father was, only that her mother had stopped mentioning him years ago. She said she would come back. Evelyn insisted one evening, her voice trembling. Maybe she got lost. Samuel felt a pang of helplessness. He couldn't bring himself to confirm the truth he suspected. Evelyn's mother had abandoned her, perhaps overwhelmed by the demands of raising a blind child. He couldn't imagine the fear and pain that must have led to such a choice, but he also couldn't ignore the consequences now sitting on his couch. When he contacted the authorities, they offered little hope. Social services were overloaded, they said, and placing Evelyn in the system might mean years of instability. She needs more than a temporary solution, one caseworker told him. The words lingered in Samuel's mind, nudging him toward a decision he never thought he'd make. "I'll keep her," he finally declared one evening, more to himself than anyone else. Evelyn's presence brought new purpose to Samuel's life. He began to teach her the way he knew best, through words and ideas. He introduced her to Braille, carefully guiding her fingers over the raised dots of classic literature. At first, Evelyn struggled, her frustration spilling into tears. But Samuel's patience never wavered. "You're stronger than this," he told her one day, his voice firm but kind. "The world may not see it, but you have a light inside you. Let it shine." Slowly but surely, Evelyn began to thrive. She absorbed stories of heroes and dreamers, finding solace in tales of those who overcame insurmountable odds. But life wasn't without its challenges. The neighborhood children were often cruel, taunting her blindness with whispered insults and tripping her when Samuel wasn't watching. Evelyn tried to ignore them, but their words cut deep. One day, after a particularly harsh encounter, she burst into tears on the walk home. "Why am I like this?" she sobbed. "Why can't I be normal?" Samuel knelt beside her, his weathered hands resting gently on her shoulders. "Normal is just a word," he said. "You're extraordinary, Evelyn, and one day you'll show the world exactly what that means." That night, Samuel made a silent vow. He would do everything in his power to help Evelyn rise above the pain and prejudice the world threw at her. She deserved nothing less. As the years passed, Evelyn transformed under Samuel's guidance. His home became her sanctuary and his lessons her foundation. Evelyn's fingers danced over Braille books like a pianist over ivory keys. She devoured knowledge with a hunger Samuel hadn't seen in his years as a professor. But the road was anything but smooth. The world outside was often cruel, and Evelyn faced rejection at every turn. Local schools refused to enroll her, claiming they didn't have the resources to accommodate a blind student. Samuel fought tirelessly, writing letters, meeting with administrators, and even consulting legal advocates. "She has as much right to an education as any other child," Samuel argued during one heated school board meeting. His voice echoed in the empty auditorium, but his words fell on deaf ears. Evelyn was denied yet again. That evening, she sat by the window, listening to the rain tap against the glass. "Maybe I'm not meant to go to school," she said quietly. The words filled with resignation. Samuel knelt beside her, his face lined with determination. "You're meant for far more than school, Evelyn. We'll find another way." True to his word, Samuel became her teacher. He created a curriculum tailored to her strengths, combining classical education with practical skills to navigate her world. He taught her to use a cane, to read Braille maps, and to listen to the subtle cues of her surroundings. Evelyn's confidence grew, but so did her desire to belong. One day, during a walk through the bustling streets of Manhattan, Evelyn heard the distant notes of a violin. She tugged at Samuel's sleeve. "What's that sound?" He guided her toward a street performer playing under the shade of a bridge. The music was hauntingly beautiful, and Evelyn stood entranced. When the song ended, she whispered, "I want to make music like that." Samuel hesitated. He knew little about music, but he also knew the fire of passion when he saw it. The next week, he surprised Evelyn with a small keyboard he'd found at a thrift store. She spent hours exploring its keys, her touch growing more confident with each passing day. Music became her language, a way to express the emotions she struggled to articulate. Evelyn's talent didn't go unnoticed. At 15, she auditioned for a scholarship at a prestigious music academy for students with disabilities. The judges were skeptical at first, their eyes darting between her frail frame and her unseeing gaze. But when Evelyn played, their doubts melted into awe. She poured her heart into every note, her music telling a story of struggle, resilience, and hope. "She's extraordinary," one judge remarked, his voice tinged with emotion. Evelyn won the scholarship and began attending classes, finally finding a place where she belonged. But even at the academy, challenges persisted. Some students resented her success, whispering that she was only there because of her disability. Others excluded her from group projects, claiming she slowed them down. Evelyn felt the sting of their words but refused to let them define her. One evening, as she practiced late into the night, Samuel found her in tears. "They don't want me there," she confessed. "Maybe I don't deserve it." Samuel sat beside her, his voice steady and unwavering. "Evelyn, the world will always have people who doubt you, but their doubts don't matter. What matters is that you believe in yourself." His words reignited her resolve. Over the next few years, Evelyn dedicated herself to her craft, winning competitions and earning respect from even her harshest critics. She became a symbol of perseverance at the academy, inspiring other students to embrace their own struggles as sources of strength. But the journey wasn't just about music. Evelyn began volunteering at community centers, teaching Braille and music to children with disabilities. She saw pieces of herself in their shy smiles and hesitant steps. "If I can help even one child see their worth," she told Samuel, "then all of this will be worth it." Through every obstacle, Evelyn carried Samuel's unwavering belief in her. And while she still wondered about the mother who had left her so many years ago, she focused on building a future where no child would feel the pain of abandonment she had once known. The fall of those who abandoned her, 3,200 words. Evelyn was 21 when the unexpected happened. By then, she had become a rising star in the world of classical music, her story a beacon of hope for countless others. Her performances were sold out, and she had recently been invited to perform at Carnegie Hall, a dream few dared to imagine. It was during the preparations for this prestigious event that her past resurfaced. "It's not about what you can't do," she would tell others. "It's about what you choose to do with what you have."